In a realm where countless nations and races coexist, magic is simply a natural part of everyday life. Manking calls this world Surasia, a land where every single soul is born with mana dwelling inside their body. This mana not only fuels a vast array of magical arts used by its inhabitants in their daily lives, but through magicite crystals capable of storing that power, it has also become the main energy resource sustaining human civilization. Unsurprisingly, having such a vital resource meant that mana would also become the ultimate catalyst for brutal, endless wars. And so, the world continually spiraled into a cycle of bloodshed and tragedy. Deep beneath the surface, inside the dark underground cathedral of the Polisia Empire, a young man screams out in agony as massive jolts of raw energy rip through his body. Standing over him, a smug Imperial commander bursts into laughter, mocking him for single-handedly supplying enough mana to sustain their crumbling empire. Grabbing the boy by his hair, the commander admits that the rumors about him being a magical genius were definitely true. He taunts him, saying he isn't a prince or even a human anymore, just a glorified machine built to pump out infinite mana. Gritting his teeth in pure frustration, our protagonist refuses to let this cruel villain completely break his spirit. Angry and defiant, former Prince Yahello yells back at him, asking why he would ever help the monsters who destroyed his kingdom and killed his parents. But as Yahello shouts, heavy armored footsteps echo through the hall as an imposing figure steps forward. It is Veld Polisia, the emperor himself, who cold-heartedly tells Yahello that his country and parents died entirely because of him and his infinite mana. Hearing those harsh words hits Yahello like a physical blow, leaving him trembling in total disbelief and horror. Veld stares down at him with zero remorse, declaring that Yahello's very existence was nothing short of a calamity for his own nation. The commander bursts out laughing again, completely agreeing that Yahello was nothing more than a curse to his own people. Exhausted and broken, Yahello thinks to himself that he'd rather die than be used like this, but Veld suddenly brings up Yahello's younger sister. A terrifying smirk appears on the emperor's face as he turns Yahello's family into leverage. Yahello immediately freaks out in total panic, desperately shouting at Veld not to dare lay a finger on his little sister, Noel. Turning his back to leave, Veld coldly warns him that whether Noel lives or dies depends entirely on Yahello's absolute cooperation. Yahello frantically screams for Veld to wait, but the cold ruler doesn't even bother to glance back. Without losing a second, the Anicaps commander gleefully pulls the lever on the mana extraction device. Agonizing bolts of energy shoot through Yahello once again, forcing another painful scream out of his throat as his mana is violently drained. Through the unimaginable pain, Yahello vows that he will never forgive them, telling them to take all the mana they want for now. Reaching his chain hand out in pure hatred, Yahello swears on his life that one day he will kill Veld Polisia with his own two hands. The scene shifts to a few days earlier in the peaceful kingdom of Manhwa, a small nation located in southern Surasia. Queen Felicia Manhwa gently tells Yahello to put his books away, reminding him that he won't be able to share a meal with Noel for a while. Obediently agreeing, young Yahello closes his book and prepares for family dinner. Yahello asks his mother if Noel will ever get to visit home while studying abroad, though his mother notes that Safara Academy is extremely far away. King Manhwa sighs, feeling sentimental about the fact that his little daughter is already going off to study abroad at just 10 years old. Right on cue, Princess Noel dramatically bursts into the room to show off her brand new academy uniform. Both parents shower her with compliments, saying she looks as beautiful as her mother, making the young princess giggle in joy. Noel turns to Yahello and teases him for reading that same book again, though Yahello proudly defends his favorite story. Noel asks if that's the tale where a strange mysterious gate appears whenever a hero dies. Smiling proudly, Yahello explains that it's called Avalon's Gate, home to legendary figures like Sir Halbert and Lady Faye. Noel lightheartedly calls him a total brat, prompting Yahello to scoff back that he definitely doesn't want to hear that from her. Posing proudly in her new uniform, Noel asks her brother what he genuinely thinks of her outfit. Smiling softly at her, Yahello gives her a heartwarming compliment, telling Noel that she is without a doubt the cutest little sister in the entire world. Noel joyfully tells her mother that Yahello praised her outfit, while Queen Felicia warmly reminds them to finish eating before her carriage arrives. Meanwhile, King Cain starts quietly sniffling, leading the queen to teasingly remark the king is crying purely out of loneliness. Noel warmly reassures her father that even when they are far apart, she will always love her family with all her heart. Outside the castle, Queen Felicia gives Noel a tight farewell hug, gently telling her not to push herself too hard while studying abroad. Yahello and his father encourage her, with Yahello promising to come save her if anything ever happens, reminding her how talented she truly is. Smiling brightly, Noel promises her family that she will stay strong and do her absolute best. Giving her family one final, graceful bow, Noel thanks her parents and brother for supporting her decision to pursue her dreams. As the carriage begins to roll away, Noel waves out the window to her family, officially embarking on her long journey. Later that night, a dark shadow falls over the quiet kingdom as an unexpected disaster strikes without warning. A sudden loud explosion echoes across the castle grounds, abruptly jolting Yahello out of his sleep. Rushing out to his balcony, Yahello is horrified to see massive flames completely engulfing the city below. Realizing the kingdom is under siege, Yahello dashes through the castle hallways toward the throne room. Inside the castle hall, utter chaos reigns supreme as panicked soldiers rush around while King Cain desperately attempts to manage the situation. Spotting Yol, the king grimly reveals that Emperor Veld of the Pelasgia Empire has personally launched an invasion, leaving Yol in total shock, since they were supposed to be allies. Before Yol can even process the betrayal, a massive rumble shakes the entire castle structure. King Kayan grabs Yol by the shoulders, urgently ordering his son to take his mother and flee the castle immediately. The king insists that as the sovereign ruler, it is his sworn duty to stand behind and protect the kingdom until the very end. Yol desperately asks about the innocent townsfolk outside, but King Kayan can only lower his eyes in heavy silence. Refusing to abandon his people to die, Yol resolutely declares that he will go to the front lines himself. Even as his father tries to stop him, Yol insists that every soldier is family in town, believing he has the power to save them. Full of determination, Yol reminds his father that he is known as the greatest mage in the history of the Royal Magic Academy. Meanwhile, down in the burning city streets, ruthlessly brutal Imperial soldiers tear through the defenseless citizens. A helpless woman screams out in terror on the ground as an invading soldier pins her down during the rampage. The cruel Imperial invaders laugh callously among themselves, boasting that taking whatever spoils they want is the absolute best part of war. Suddenly, a powerful magical chant echoes through the night sky, demanding the enemy offer up their very breath. As the magical incantation continues to surge, it calls for the enemy's flowing blood to be spilled. Appearing on the scene, Yol manifests a massive glowing magic circle, channeling his mana into a wave of destructive fire magic. With a roar, Yol releases his spell, Flame Burst Blazing Dust, incinerating the invading soldiers in a brilliant wall of roaring flames. Watching from afar, an old enemy mage and a soldier stare in pure disbelief that a 15-year-old prince can freely cast 5th-tier magic. Standing firm amidst the burning alley, Yol bravely declares that he will not allow the invading army to advance any further. But when Yol glances back toward the royal castle, his heart sinks as he notices massive flames consuming the throne room. High above the kingdom, the entire royal castle courtyard is engulfed in an inferno as Imperial forces breach the inner sanctum. Deep inside the castle grounds, Emperor Veld and his commander confront the captured royal couple, coldly asking where their son is hiding. The Eye Patch commander draws his blade directly against King Kayan's neck, viciously demanding an immediate answer. Before the commander can strike, Yol suddenly drops down from above and lands directly between them. Consumed by anger and panic, Yol screams at the top of his lungs for the invaders to stop touching his parents. Glancing over, the Eye Patch commander chuckles maliciously, informing Emperor Veld that he has finally located the Prince of Manhwa. Hearing the commander address the dark figure, Yol realizes with horror who is standing right in front of him. He comes face to face with Emperor Vered Parisia himself, the dreaded sovereign of the ruthless Pelasgia Empire. Realizing the true trap, King Kayan desperately yells at Yel to ignore them and run away as fast as he can. To force Yol's submission, the evil commander viciously slashes King Kayan right across the chest. Watching his father bleed, Yol screams out in agony as he desperately tries to cast a spell to save him. Emperor Veld calmly turns his cold, glowing yellow gaze directly toward the young prince. With a single fluid movement, Veld swings his sword downward, unleashing a devastating wave of sword aura. Yol stares in absolute disbelief as the Emperor effortlessly cuts straight through his magic circle, something that should be physically impossible. Veld acknowledges Yol's rare talent for chantless magic, reiterating that he only invaded the kingdom to claim Yol's inexhaustible mana supply. The sadistic commander twists the blade further into King Kayan, threatening to prolong his agony unless Yol surrenders immediately. Unable to bear seeing his father tortured any longer, Yol screams for them to stop. Broken and powerless, Yol drops to his knees, begging them to spare his father as he agrees to peacefully surrender. The commander immediately locks magic, sealing shackles onto Yol's wrists, rendering the young genius completely unable to channel his mana. Clinging to their bargain, Yol demands to know if they will now honor their word and release his parents and people. But Emperor Veld simply turns around to leave, coldly instructing his commander to bring Yol to the extraction facility and deal with the rest. Commander Gates' Belgut bursts into wicked laughter, ordering his men to slaughter every single man and do whatever they want with the women. Yol falls into utter despair, realizing too late that his surrender was completely meaningless and won't save anyone. Gates sinisterly forces Yol to watch the execution, commanding the young prince to keep his eyes wide open. Yol screams at the top of his lungs in helpless agony as the slaughter unfolds right in front of his eyes. King Kayan looks at his son one final time with a bittersweet expression, softly calling out Yol's name before his life is taken. In a flash of blood and cruel violence, Yol's mother is also brutally murdered right before his eyes. Tears streaming down his face, Yol explodes into pure rage, swearing to hunt down and kill every single enemy soldier responsible. Gates just laughs off Yol's threats as pathetic entertainment while continuing his ruthless rampage. Fueled by sheer rage, Yol charges forward with all his strength despite being bound by magic, sealing shackles. In a desperate attempt to avenge his family, Yol leaps onto Gates and savagely bites directly into the commander's neck. Enraged by the sudden bite, Gates curses and savagely backhands Yol, knocking the boy unconscious. As Yol loses consciousness, Gates orders his men to drag him away, leaving the destroyed kingdom of Manhwa wiped from existence. Returning to the present, Yol remains trapped in the extraction device, unable to tell how many days or years of endless torture have passed. With his throat bloodied from non-stop screaming and his body completely numb, Yol barely registers his physical existence anymore. He is tormented by endless regret, wishing he had been strong enough or listened to his father's order to flee. He tortures himself with thoughts that at least his mother could have survived if he had made a different choice. Looking back at the lost days of happiness with his family, Yol realizes that only true power could have changed their tragic fate. Tears drop from his eyes as he comes to the bitter realization of just how weak and powerless he truly was. The guards standing by mockingly laugh at his tears, calling him pathetic and reminding him of the Emperor's words. Suddenly, a loud screeching noise echoes as the mana gauge meter begins to fluctuate wildly. Massive electric shocks surge through Yol's body once again, pushing his agonizing torment beyond all human limits. As his energy drains to zero, Yol begins to reflect on the true nature of mana, recalling how his rare gift allowed him to perceive it directly. Deep inside his mind, he senses that the very last ember of his mana supply is on the verge of burning out completely. But as his mana reaches its limit, Yol suddenly perceives a mysterious, brilliant orb of light forming the outline of a soul. In his final moments, a grand revelation strikes him. Mana was never just energy, it was the soul itself all along. With his mana completely depleted, the core of his soul suddenly fractures and shatters into pieces. The extraction machine abruptly powers down as the guards panic upon seeing the mana supply cut off entirely. Checking on the boy, the guard screams out in shock as Yol's limp body hangs motionless in the chains, declaring him dead. As Yol's physical body dies, a mysterious voice echoes through the ethereal realm, calling out his name in front of a giant glowing gate. Ethereal hands reach toward him as the voice commands him to open his eyes, announcing that he has been chosen as a hero. A strange metallic guardian appears face to face with him, welcoming Yol into Avalon's Gate. Yol's floating soul realizes with shock that Avalon's Gate, the legendary realm from his childhood storybook, actually exists. Looking up at the massive gate floating above his corpse, Yol can barely believe that the old fairy tale was real all along. The Gate Guardian addresses him as a new hero, declaring that he has earned the right to enter and become eternal within Avalon's Gate. Yol hesitates in confusion, questioning why someone weak like him would ever be chosen as a hero. The ethereal hands begin pulling Yol's soul upward into the glowing gateway. Looking back down, Yol sees his own lifeless body in chains while the Imperial Guards callously laugh about earning medals for his death. As the spirit drifts higher, Yol begins to accept his fate, wondering if his suffering is finally over. But the memory of his family pulls at his conscience, making him feel that he doesn't deserve peace when everyone else died because of him. Apologizing to Noel in his heart, Yol prepares to pass on, but memories of his sister's vibrant voice suddenly flash through his mind. He remembers Noel proudly showing off her new uniform before leaving for the academy. He recalls the warmth of their final family dinner together filled with smiles and laughter. He vividly remembers Noel thanking them all for letting her pursue her dream of studying abroad. Shaking off his despair, Yol rejects the title of hero, angrily shouting that it's impossible for him to just rest here. Remembering his solemn promise to protect Noel if anything ever went wrong, Yol realizes his job isn't finished yet. With newfound resolve, Yol forcefully slaps away the ethereal hands trying to drag him into the gate. The Gate Guardian remains expressionless, coldly commanding Yoromenu to pass through the entrance regardless. Defying the Guardian's orders, Yol shouts in refusal and tries to cast his fire spell once again. But to his shock, not even a single spark of fire emerges from his outstretched hand. Yol stares at his spirit hands in horror, realizing that his soul can no longer produce any mana after being drained completely dry. The Guardian coldly informs Yoru that while he was granted the right to enter Avalon's Gate, he was never granted the right to refuse it. Refusing to obey, Yol curses at the gate, shouting that he is the only one left who can protect his little sister. He screams in utter desperation, refusing to accept death while his sister is still out there somewhere alone. The Guardian remains unfazed, informing Yoru that he doesn't possess the right to decide his own fate either. Massive ethereal hands reach out and forcefully grab Yol, overpowering his struggles. Recalling his breakthrough about the soul being mana itself, Yol maneuvers his spirit body to try and manipulate the soul energy around him. The Guardian stares down at him with glowing eyes, warning Yoru that he doesn't belong in the mortal realm anymore. Refusing to back down, Yol's eyes burn with fierce determination. He yells at the top of his lungs, telling the Gate Guardian never to decide his fate for him. Channeling his own soul's shape, Yol amazingly shatters the ethereal hands binding him. Panting heavily, Yol stands his ground as the dissolved spirit hands crumble into dust around him. Observing from within the gate, the legendary heroic spirits stare in shock, unable to believe a newly deceased soul can move freely and manipulate soul contours. Hearing voices from inside the glowing portal, Yol turns his head in surprise. Looking at the silhouettes, Yol suddenly remembers the illustration of the heroes from his favorite childhood book. Yol immediately recognizes the blue-haired spirit, asking in awe if he is truly Lord Halbert of the Mighty Sword. Lord Halbert boasts smugly that the kid recognized him, while Lady Faye tells him not to get overly excited just because a boy knows his name. Yol stares up at the entrance in wonder, realizing that the legendary heroes from the fairy tales are actually resting inside. Lady Faye turns her attention back to Yol, calmly warning him that he is running out of time and will eventually have to pass through the gate. Lady Faye reminds Yol that even the mightiest heroes could not escape death, but Yol grits his teeth, damning destiny to hell. The gate guardian announces that his time is up, warning Yoro of the dire consequences if he chooses to resist. The guardian's face turns ominous, threatening him that hell itself awaits if he defies the gate. Dozens of giant ethereal hands burst forth from Avalon's gate, surging toward Yol to drag him in. Unfazed by the threat of hell, Yol shouts back that he still has unfinished business in the mortal world. Surrounded by a surge of power, Yol proclaims at the top of his lungs that his little sister Noel is still waiting for him. To the guardian's complete disbelief, the gate begins to shut down under the sheer force of Yol's soul. The heroic spirits watch in absolute awe as Yol forcefully seals Avalon's gate shut from the outside. Slamming his hand against the portal door, Yol seals the gateway to the afterlife with raw willpower. Catching his breath, Yol calls out to the heroic spirits, asking if any among them are willing to walk through hell alive with him. Silence hangs over the chamber for a moment before a booming, wild laugh suddenly echoes from within the void. Lord Halbert and Lady Fay watch in shock, with Lady Fay remarking that the poor kid must have completely lost his mind. Yol stares back at the legendary figures in disappointment, realizing how underwhelming these so-called heroes actually are. He smirks at them, declaring that despite their grand titles as heroes, they are all just a bunch of ordinary, fearful souls. Yol shouts a bold proposition, offering to bring a hero back to life in the mortal realm in exchange for their power. The heroic spirits dismiss his proposal as childish delusions, claiming they fulfilled their destinies long ago and have no desire to live again. Suddenly, a fierce voice commands everyone in the room to shut up. Yol turns toward the dark interior of the portal, wondering who spoke out so aggressively. A wild, eccentric spirit chuckles menacingly, finding Yol amusing and gladly accepting his bet to walk through hell together. A violent surge of spectral energy shoots forth from the portal and slams directly into Yol's soul. Gritting his teeth, Yol groans in pain as the spirit's power fuses directly into his spirit body. As Avalon's gate vanishes into light, Yol holds onto the image of his sister, promising that he will definitely come back for her. Back in the physical world inside the Imperial Cathedral, a guard asks his comrade what they should do with Yol's corpse. The other guard shrugs, stating that disposing of the body is up to their platoon leader. Complaining that Yol is a pain in the ass even after dying, they discuss loading his body onto a cart. But behind their backs, Yol's corpse suddenly rises to its feet, his hair now mysteriously turned half white and half black. The guards turn around in utter shock, but one quickly draws his sword to force the resurrected prince back into submission. In the blink of an eye, Yol disarms the guard and slashes his arm off, leaving the Imperial soldiers frozen in absolute terror. Inspecting the stolen blade, Yol calmly notes with a smirk that the sword is incredibly blunt. With godlike speed, Yol executes the surrounding guards in a violent flash of blood and steel. Standing amidst the spray of blood, Yol marvels at the sight, finding a twisted beauty in the falling crimson mist. With a chillingly serene smile on his face, he whispers for the remaining guards to show him more of their dancing blood. The remaining guards stumble backward in sheer panic, unable to comprehend how a chained mage could possess such insane swordsmanship. Step by step, Yol approaches them through the bloody chamber as a terrified guard screams out, asking what kind of monster he is. The heroic spirit possessing him reveals his legendary identity as Okita Soji, the first unit captain of the Shinsengumi. Deep inside the underground church of Beligi Empire, the terrified guards cower on the ground in front of the resurrected prince. Channeling Okita Soji's legendary sword stance, Yol grips his blade with master-level precision. The guards stare at him in utter confusion, wondering who Kitao is and assuming the prince has gone completely insane. Yol bursts into wild laughter, wiping his forehead as he casually agrees that maybe he really has lost his mind. Completely terrified by his terrifying aura, the guards flee up the stairs, desperately screaming for reinforcements. Raising his bloody blade with a sinister grin, Okita Soji inside Yol's body boasts about feeling the thrill of the battlefield once again. But right as he prepares to slaughter more guards, violent bolts of blue lightning suddenly erupt from Yol's heart. Yol gasps in sheer agony as his heart burns under immense internal pressure. Overwhelmed by the intense pain, Yol collapses to his knees, dropping his sword onto the stone floor. Screaming out in pain, Yol is suddenly consumed by a blinding flash of white light. When Yol opens his eyes, he finds himself standing in a serene, sunny meadow where several legendary figures are sitting at a long tea table. Yol looks around in utter confusion, wondering what kind of strange place he has been transported to this time. Laughing maniacally, a dark-haired man explains that this is the inner realm of Yol's soul, telling him he should already recognize everyone present. Realizing that the memories of these spirits are flowing directly into his mind, Yol begins recognizing their true identities one by one. Looking at the laughing man, Yol realizes he is face-to-face with the notorious Japanese warlord, Matsunaga Danjo. Known throughout history as a master of rebellion and a fanatic for rare tea utensils, Matsunaga Danjo Hide greets him with a sinister smile. Next, Yol turns his attention to a blonde woman clad in silver armor who stares at him with cold, piercing blue eyes. She is none other than Joan of Arc, the holy maiden of Orleans who is tragically abandoned by God. Leaning against a nearby tree are Che Guevara, the tainted revolutionary, and Robin Hood, the legendary guardian archer of Sherwood Forest. Lounging gracefully on a carpet is the breathtakingly gorgeous Viper Queen, Cleopatra herself. Sitting quietly in deep meditation is Simon Magus, the infamous ancient sorcerer recognized as the founder of all heresies. Suddenly, a figure in Japanese robes steps forward and approaches Yol from across the grass. It is Okita Soji, the genius swordsman whose spirit had possessed Yol's body just moments prior. Looking around at this bizarre gathering of historical figures, Yol honestly admits that he doesn't recognize any of them from his world's history. Che Guevara takes a puff from his cigar, reminding Yol that since they originate from Earth, neither side knows anything about the other's world. As Okita Soji casually drapes an arm around him, Yol realizes that Avalon's Gate gathered legendary heroes from entirely different dimensions. Slamming his hands on the table, Yol passionately yells that he doesn't care where they came from as long as they lend him their power to save his sister. But to his shock, the legendary heroes coldly reject his plea one by one, declaring that they have zero interest in helping him. Simon Magus, Cleopatra, and Danjo Hizahide also refuse him, stating that fulfilling his request is completely impossible. Stunned by their unanimous rejection, Yol stands frozen in utter confusion. Joan of Arc reminds him of his own words, pointing out that their deal was based on him bringing them back to life in exchange for their power. Robin Hood snorts, stating that if Yol fails to fulfill his end of the bargain, there is no reason for any of them to keep theirs. Okita Soji chuckles, mentioning that Yol could simply surrender full control of his body to them like he did earlier. But Okita ominously warns that if Yol surrenders his body, the heroes would instantly fight a brutal war amongst themselves for total control. Robin Hood scowls, telling Okita to shut his mouth instead of spouting tedious nonsense. Tension flares between the heroes as Robin Hood notes that they are strictly forbidden from taking over Yol's body anyway. Simon Magus speaks up, explaining that because their spirits are now bound to Yol's soul, any damage they suffer will directly injure Yol. He stares intensely at Yol, grimly adding that if Yol happens to perish in battle, the heroes will all vanish from existence right along with him. Joan of Arc sighs, noting that dying again would just mean returning to eternal death anyway. Heavy silence falls over the meadow as the legendary figures ponder their fragile current situation. Breaking the silence, Yol looks directly at the heroes and asks what each of them truly desires if they are brought back to life. At his question, the eyes of every single Earth hero ignite with fierce, burning passion in the dark. Matsunaga Danjo grins maniacally, declaring his desire for aestheticism, to claim every beautiful item imbued with a soul in this world. Joan of Arc stares with ice-cold malice, declaring her goal is salvation of the weak, to completely eradicate the weak without leaving a single bone behind. Che Guevara grins wildly, declaring his desire for revolution, a fierce tempest where unstoppable winds rage across the land. Robin Hood shares his own simple wish for forest tranquility, desiring nothing more than to live peacefully in a quiet forest undisturbed. Cleopatra winks playfully, revealing her desire as the queen of pleasure, to indulge in the absolute ultimate pleasures of life. Simon Magus declares his goal as omniscient gluttony, seeking to devour all world secrets to attain perfect knowledge. Finally, Okita Soji reveals his desire as mad death by assassination, to die a satisfying death on a glorious battlefield worthy of his life. With their desires laid bare, Yol looks at them sullenly, asking what if he actually knows a way to permanently revive them. The legendary figures turn their eyes toward Yol in utter shock, stunned by his sudden claim. Surrounding the table, the heroes lean in closer, demand to know what crazy plan Yol has in mind. Okita Soji bursts out laughing in delight, enthusiastically joining Yol's, since sitting around doing nothing would be completely boring. Turning back to immediate reality, the heroes ask Yol how he plans to deal with the Imperial soldiers surrounding his physical body. Standing up from the table, Yol calmly states that there's a new ability he wants to test out. The scene shifts back to the physical world inside the Imperial Cathedral's basement. Surrounded by dead guards, Yol kneels on the floor as a brilliant blue magic circle begins glowing beneath his feet. Closing his eyes, Yol begins softly chanting a brand new incantation. Raw magical energy surges violently around him as he recites a spell calling upon the chaos of dawn and evening. Clapping his hands together, Yol casts his newly created spell, Hero Manifestation. In a blinding flash of light, Okita Soji physically materializes in the real world right before the soldier's eyes. Okita marvels at his new physical body in delight, while the terrified Imperial guards scream out in total panic. Yol stands back calmly while an enemy soldier desperately orders his squad to ignore the stranger and kill the prince. Before the guard can even take a step, Okita moves in a blur and decapitates him with a single swift strike. Flashing a charming smile amidst the falling blood, Okita casually invites the next victim to step forward. As he walks toward the cowering guards, Okita casually turns to Yol and asks how Yol managed to manifest him into the physical world. Yol chuckles softly, trying to figure out how to explain his intuitive understanding of soul magic. He explains that magic incantations and soul concepts have always come completely naturally to him as an innate talent. Okita smirks back in understanding, acknowledging that true genius requires no formal explanation. Infuriated by their casual conversation in the middle of battle, an Imperial soldier charges at Okita with his blade raised. Sidestepping the attack effortlessly, Okita murmurs that the soldier's speed is painfully slow. With a masterstroke of his katana, Okita instantly slices the attacking soldier down without breaking a sweat. Okita's playful gaze suddenly turns dead serious as he senses a stronger presence entering the hall. Executing a flawless reverse strike without even looking, he impales another guard directly behind him. Okita smiles softly to himself, realizing that Yol was definitely not chosen by Avalon's Gate by sheer coincidence. The remaining guards stumble backward in pure terror, unable to comprehend how their offensive turned into a complete slaughter. Suddenly, a giant heavily armored Imperial captain steps forward, angrily barking at his men for cowering in fear. Okita looks up at the towering captain with an amused smile, completely unbothered by his massive size. The giant commander scolds his subordinates, roaring at them for cowering before a single swordsman. Trembling under their captain's furious gaze, the soldiers stand at attention and apologize profusely. Okita's eyes glint with playful excitement as he inspects his new opponent. He playfully taunts the giant captain, asking him to at least put up a decent fight to entertain him. Glaring down with bloodthirsty rage, the captain curses Okita as utter trash. With a loud roar, the massive captain shatters the stone floor beneath him as he lunges forward to crush Okita. Laughing out loud during the battle, Okita praises the giant captain's raw physical strength. Dodging the heavy blow with ease, Okita gracefully glides across the floor to create some distance. As he moves, Okita suddenly feels a strange pull on his physical form. Glancing back, Okita tests his movement range, realizing that his manifested form has a physical tether limit. He calculates his boundary, realizing he can't move more than 20 feet away from Yol's physical body. Taking advantage of Okita's momentary distraction, the giant captain swings his massive weapon with full force. With lightning-fast reflexes, Okita leaps high into the air to avoid the devastating swing. Mid-air, Okita delivers 3 razor-sharp strikes directly against the captain's heavy steel plate. But to Okita's surprise, the captain's reinforced armor absorbs the blow without taking a single dent. The captain turns around with an arrogant smirk, mocking Okita for failing to pierce his defense. Okita analyzes the situation, wondering if the armor is made of magicite or protected by this world's magical spells. Instead of being discouraged, Okita's eyes flash with excitement, finding the magical challenge genuinely interesting. Lowering his stance, Okita begins channeling Yol's mana directly into his own katana. Believing his defense is impenetrable, the giant captain roars that any further attack is completely futile. In a fraction of a second, Okita dashes forward and cleaves clean through the captain's reinforced armor and body. The Imperial Guard scream in absolute horror as their giant platoon leader collapses, bisected in a single blow. Okita turns his gaze toward the remaining soldiers, his blue eyes glowing with lethal intent. Emitting a terrifying aura, Okita calmly tells the terrified guards that his loyal comrades, they should all die together. But while Okita approaches the fleeing guards, a sneaky survivor sneaks up behind Yol with a wicked grin. The guard suddenly grabs Yol from behind, holding a sharp blade directly against the young prince's throat. Laughing maliciously, the guard demands Okita drop his sword, while Yol apologizes to Okita for letting his guard down. But Okita simply closes his eyes and smiles warmly, reassuring Yol that everything is completely fine. In the time it takes the guard to blink, Okita executes a blinding dash forward, declaring that his mind is already made up. In an instant, Okita impales the guard's head, swearing that he will never lose another comrade ever again. The hostage-taker collapses dead on the floor before he could even register what happened. Yol stares in awe at Okita's speed, marveling at the incredible, overwhelming power of a true hero. But Okita reflects internally, realizing that his strength is being massively amplified by Yol's unique mana output. The last remaining guards flee up the stairs in sheer panic, screaming that they need to report this monster to General Getz. Okita prepares to spring forward after them, asking with a grin if they really thought he'd let them escape alive. But before Okita can take a step, Yol suddenly clutches his chest as a wave of intense pain hits him. Yol violently coughs up blood and collapses, forcing Okita to immediately turn back in panic. With Yol's mana depleted, Okita's physical manifestation dissolves as his spirit is pulled back into Yol's inner realm. The scene shifts back to the peaceful, sunny meadow within Yol's soul realm. Sheathing his sword, Okita asks Yol if he's alright, noting that the manifestation spell places an immense strain on his physical body. Panting heavily, Yol explains that controlling this newly awakened soul power felt like trying to contain boiling magma inside his body. Supporting Yol's weight, Okita is internally astounded by Yol's terrifying natural talent to control such advanced magic while battered and injured. Sitting on the porch together, Yol praises Okita's strength, but Okita humbly replies that he needs to get much stronger to match his former Shinsengumi comrades. Looking warmly at Yol, Okita declares that Yol is now officially one of his cherished comrades as well. Surprised by his words, Yol listens as Okita promises to always have his back, as long as Yol never betrays him. Staring up at the sunny sky, Okita softly asks Yol never to leave him behind again, remembering his past regrets. Yol bows his head, suddenly remembering something important he forgot to express. Yol bows deeply to Okita, sincerely thanking the legendary swordsman for saving his life. Okita looks at him with a soft, warm smile, touched by Yol's genuine gratitude. Back in the physical world, Yol exits the underground church entrance wearing a tattered cloak under the cover of night. Behind him, a fiery explosion collapses the underground cathedral, sealing his past away in rubble. Looking out into the night, Yol reflects on how unbelievable it is that Avalon's Gate harbored heroes from completely different dimensions. With a confident smirk, Yol realizes this actually works in his favor, as unhinged heroes unbound by this world's rules are exactly what he needs to achieve his goals. Clenching his fist tightly, Yol vows to find and protect no matter what stands in his way. Staring in the night sky, Yol declares that saving his sister is the sole reason he fought his way back from death. The scene shifts to Kepler, a gloomy town located on the outskirts of the Belgian Empire, strictly patrolled by Imperial guards. Kepler was once a bustling and picturesque hot spring town, but everything changed 2 years ago. Ever since the Empire occupied the town, it became a shadow of its former self, filled with suffering citizens. Stumbling through the dark alleys, Yol struggles to move his weak, battered body, relieved to have found a nearby town. Gritting his teeth, Yol realizes he urgently needs to heal his physical body if he hopes to go after Noel. Approaching a local fruit vendor, Yol asks the old merchant what year it currently is, learning that it is 1321 on the Bardia calendar. Hearing the year, Yol's heart drops as he calculates that 5 whole years have passed since his kingdom fell. Before he can process the 5-year time jump, the rude vendor kicks the penniless Yol away from his stall. Clutching his stomach on the cold dirt road, Yol desperately prays in his heart for Noel's safety. Down the alley, 3 Imperial soldiers surround a hooded figure, barking racist insults at them for being a beastkin in a human town. Cruelly striking the hooded figure across the face, the guard laughs, claiming they need to discipline the beastkin. As blood drips on the cobblestones, the guard yanks the hood back, gasping in surprise at what he sees. The figure is revealed to be a female beastkin girl with cat ears and a tail, glaring back defiantly despite her injuries. The guards grin disgustingly, plotting to sell her as an expensive slave after checking her body first. Terrified by their sickening intentions, the beastkin girl backs against the wall, desperately telling the guards to stay back. The guard lets out a revolting laugh as he reaches out toward the helpless girl. But before the guard can touch her, Yol's shadow looms over them as he steps directly between the soldiers and the girl. With a cold glare, Yol stares down the Imperial guards with dead, serious eyes. Without uttering a word of argument, Yol claps his hands together to invoke his magic. A brilliant surge of green mana erupts as Robin Hood, the master archer, materializes directly on the battlefield. Robin Hood marvels at being alive again after hundreds of years, while Yol urgently asks him to lend his strength to defeat the guards. The Imperial guards stumble backward in confusion, angrily shouting at Robin Hood to identify himself. Robin Hood calmly places a finger over his lips, making a shushing gesture to silence the loud soldiers. Holding his pained chest, Yol apologizes for summoning Robin Hood so suddenly, admitting he couldn't just stand by and watch a girl get harmed. Infuriated by Robin Hood's casual attitude, the guard draws his sword and screams that he'll butcher them both. In the blink of an eye, a glowing green arrow pierces clean through the guard's forehead before he can even swing his sword. Lowering his bow with a charming smirk, Robin Hood admits to Yol that he doesn't hate Yol's soft-hearted nature. The second guard screams in a mix of fury and panic, demanding to know if they dare defy the Belgian Empire. Before the guard can charge, an arrow grazes his cheek at blinding speed and embeds deep into the stone wall behind him. Knocking another arrow with lethal precision, Robin Hood coldly warns the trembling guard that if he chooses to fight, there will be no mercy. Terrified by the archer's godlike speed, the guard turns tail and flees up the dark alley, screaming empty threats as he runs. Cheering enthusiastically, Robin Hood celebrates finally having the chance to enjoy being alive once again. But right in the middle of his celebration, Robin Hood's manifested body begins dissolving back into light. Yol lies collapsed on the cold cobblestones, panting in exhaustion as he realizes his body cannot sustain the manifestation spell for long. Forcing himself to stay conscious through pure willpower, Yol vows that he must reach the location where Noel is being held. Sitting huddled against the wall, the beastkin girl stares in silent awe as Yol pushes through his physical agony. Despite his fierce determination, Yol's vision fades to black as he finally loses consciousness. Meanwhile, high above the realm, the scene shifts to Grand Masti, the grand imperial capital of the Belgian Empire. Standing at the heart of the capital is the majestic and foreboding fortress known as the Immortal Castle. Deep inside the throne room, Emperor Veld rests his chin on his hand, waiting impassively on his throne. Heavy footsteps echo across the hall as the 3 generals of the Empire enter and kneel before their sovereign. Gathered together for a solemn council are the 3 supreme generals of the Belgian Empire. General Beelzebub Gazelle, the leader of the First Legion known as the Fly, concludes his formal report to the Emperor. Emperor Veld listens silently, his cold gaze fixed on his commanders. Beelzebub offers his deepest apologies for the stagnant progress on the front lines, only for a female voice to mockingly interrupt him. It is General Mamachu of the 2nd Legion, known as the Scorpion, who smirks and offers to join the battlefield herself. Beelzebub sternly reminds her that her current assignment is also a direct decree from the Emperor, addressing her as Scorpion. Mamacho teasingly leans close to whisper his name in his ear, causing Beelzebub to snap at her in irritation. Beelzebub reprimands her for acting inappropriately in the Emperor's presence, but Mamachu simply laughs off his seriousness. Stepping forward, General Gates Burgit of the 3rd Legion, known as the Monkey, mockingly claims he would have won the war immediately. Sitting high upon his throne, Emperor Veld remains completely silent, exuding an oppressive aura over his commanders. Beelzebub retorts furiously, reminding Gates that his sole duty was supposed to be guarding the Prince of Calamity. Gates grumbles under his breath, inwardly cursing Beelzebub while vowing that his 3rd Legion will surpass everyone one day. Suddenly, a panicked Imperial guard bursts through the heavy throne room doors, shouting that he has an urgent report. All three generals freeze in utter shock as the guard announces an explosion at the cathedral and the escape of the Prince of Calamity. Gates' face turns deathly pale as horror washes over him, realizing the prisoner under his supervision has broken free. From the throne, Emperor Veld's bloodthirsty voice calls out Gates' nickname, sending a chill straight down his spine. Emperor Veld stares down at Gates with terrifying, cold fury. Sensing the Emperor's terrifying pressure, Beelzebub and Mummachu instantly drop to their knees in fear. Gates falls to his knees trembling violently, as Veld coldly reminds him that Yol was under his direct jurisdiction. Dark demonic aura fills the throne room as Veld's killer intent flares. The formidable sword saint and Emperor, Veld Palesia, demands an immediate explanation for this catastrophic failure. Sweating profusely, Gates slams his head against the carpet, begging for mercy. Stepping down from his throne, Veld declares that the fool who allowed the prince to escape deserves immediate execution. Unsheathing his massive greatsword, Veld slams it into the floor, threatening to eradicate Gates' entire family lineage. In a desperate move to save his life, Gates activates a magic circle beneath his feet. Desperately trying to escape the Emperor's wrath, Gates teleports away from the throne room. Watching him flee, Veld coldly notes that this blunder rests entirely on Gates' shoulders. Screaming for forgiveness, Gates teleports out of the castle in a panic. Before vanishing completely, Gates vows to mobilize his entire Third Legion to recapture Yol within 3 days. Lifting his greatsword, Emperor Veld gives his disgraced general 3 days before executing him. Gates Belga tumbles out of the teleportation circle, panting heavily as he barely escapes with his life. Clutching his chest, Gates remembers Emperor Veld's grim command to drag Yol back alive at all costs. The Emperor's chilling warning rings in Gates' ears. There will be no second chances if he fails again. Driven mad by fear and frustration, Gates scrapes his armored hand against the wall, swearing to hunt Yol down. Digging his fingernails into the stone, he vows to kill anyone who gets between him and the prince. Meanwhile, back inside the Soul Meadow, Yol opens his eyes with a groan as the heroes observe him. Okita Soji pauses his sword practice in the grass, asking where Yol's spirit has been transported to. Yol slowly sits up at the tea table, realizing he has been pulled back into the inner realm of his own soul. Remembering the helpless bee-skin girl in the alley, Yol slams his fists on the table, frantically asking where she is. Sitting calmly across from him, Matsunaga Danjo indifferently replies that none of them know what happened to the girl. Danjo adds that the bee-skin girl is irrelevant right now, shifting the conversation to a far more critical matter. Cleopatra leans in tantalizingly close to Yol, noting that Robin Hood's manifestation proved Yol's power can truly revive the dead. Seductively teasing the young prince, Cleopatra asks if she can be manifested next, offering a kiss as his reward. Off-panel, another hero argues that they should be summoned next, prompting Simon Magus to let out a tired sigh. Annoyed by the sorcerer's heavy sigh, Danjo and Cleopatra snap at Simon Magus in frustration. Simon Magus calmly points out that even if Yol manifests them now, they would only last a few seconds, just like Robin Hood. Yol nods solemnly in agreement, confirming that his current physical body is far too weak to sustain any long-term manifestation. Cleopatra suggests healing his physical wounds, but Simon explains that the damage from years of mana extraction has scarred Yol's very soul. Simon warns that as a vessel holding 7 heroic spirits, Yol's soul will shatter if those deep cracks aren't properly repaired first. Staring at the group, Simon confirms that fully repairing Yol's soul is the only way for the heroes to stay summoned permanently. Cleopatra urges Yol to hurry and heal, while Danjo asks if healing will restore Yol's original magic, which Simon firmly denies. Simon clarifies that normal magic requires self-generated mana, which Yol's drained soul can no longer produce on its own. Hearing that he can never cast traditional magic again, Yol lowers his head in heavy silence. Curious about his deep insight, Danjo asks Simon Magus how he possesses such profound knowledge of soul magic. Simon Magus proudly reminds them that as the famous ancient sorcerer of Sumeria, such fundamental concepts are elementary to him. He reveals that during his long stay beyond Avalon's Gate, he spent countless centuries studying the true mechanics of the soul. Danjo strokes his chin in thought, impressed by the centuries of knowledge the ancient sorcerer accumulated. Raising his head, Yol firmly states that losing his traditional magic doesn't matter to him in the slightest. With burning resolve in his eyes, Yol declares that magic or no magic, he will protect Noel, begging the heroes to lend him their strength. Across the table, Joan of Arc sets her teacup down with a sharp clatter, chuckling coldly at Yol's words. Joan of Arc glares at him with cold malice, mockingly asking how he expects to protect anyone when he is completely powerless. She flatly refuses to lend him her strength, leaving Yol in utter shock. Staring sternly at Yol, Joan criticizes him for saving the bee-skin girl in the alley, stating he should have left her to die. In a bitter flashback to her past execution, Joan recalls being burned at the stake while the weak crowds she once saved mocked her as a witch. She remembers the horrifying flames in the Square of Ruin, where her devotion was rewarded with betrayal and hatred. With immense rage in her voice, she recalls fighting for God and the weak, only be bound to a stake by the very people she fought for. As the flames consumed her, the ungrateful citizens threw sharp stones at her body without an ounce of pity. She chuckles bitterly, remembering how the cruel crowd pelted her with stones while hurling slurs at her. Screaming amidst the inferno, Joan came to the dark realization that the weak are nothing more than an incurable disease. Sipping her tea, Joan coldly concludes that the only true salvation for the weak is to eradicate them entirely from the world. She slams her hand onto the table, making it clear that if he fails to realize this crucial truth, she won't offer him her power. Our protagonist sits in silence, forced to reflect on his choice after having left that beast-kin girl behind. She reminds him that his past attempt to help the weak resulted in the tragic death of his own parents. She warns him bluntly that if he keeps making reckless choices, his sister Noah will be the next one to lose her life. Fueled by desperation and love for his family, the young man fiercely swears that he will protect Noah no matter what. Hearing his oath, she sternly advises him to start thinking far more carefully before taking action in the future. Without another word, she turns around and calmly walks away, leaving him alone with his heavy thoughts. Our hero remains seated at the table, deeply unsettled as the harsh reality of her warning sinks in. Later that night, the scene shifts to a quiet stone building resting under a clear, starry sky. Inside, the protagonist slowly opens his eyes as he begins to regain consciousness. Looking around the dimly lit stone room, he wonders where he has been brought to. As he stirs, he suddenly notices someone sleeping right beside him, comfortably resting against his chest. To his complete surprise, he finds the beast-kin girl clinging tightly to him as they lie together on the bed. Feeling him move, the beast-kin girl slowly blinks her eyes open and wakes up. Seeing that he is conscious, she excitedly jumps up, asking if he is alright while he awkwardly reassures her that he is fine. Overwhelmed with relief, tears form in her eyes as she expresses how glad she is that he survived. Caught off guard by her intense emotional reaction, our MC confusedly asks why she is crying. Instead of answering right away, she just wraps her arms tightly around him, overjoyed that he is safe. Holding her in his arms, the young man can't help but soften his expression at her genuine warmth. With a gentle smile on his face, he asks if she was the one who brought him to this place. She proudly bows on the bed, happily taking full credit for taking care of him. She explains that he suddenly collapsed and she couldn't let her savior die, though he still wonders why they ended up in bed together. Chia reveals that because he was shivering uncontrollably and there were no blankets, she used her own body heat to keep him warm. Understanding her pure intentions, our protagonist sincerely bows his head and thanks her for saving his life. His sudden, polite gesture catches Chia completely off guard, making her stare at him in surprise. He adds that he is glad she is safe as well, but then Chia suddenly asks why he went out of his way to rescue her in the first place. He simply replies that it was because the Empire's men were attacking her, stating it as if it were the most natural reason. Noticing the severe injuries all over his body, she curiously asks if the Empire was responsible for those as well. He reveals a grim truth, explaining that he was held captive and tortured by the Empire for 5 long years before managing to escape. Chia listens in shock as he reveals that his parents were brutally tortured and murdered by the Imperial forces. Overwhelmed by urgency, he clutches his head, knowing he must immediately head to Rada to protect his younger sister. He declares his ultimate goal to completely destroy the Empire, but as he tries to force himself up, his weakened body stumbles. While Chia worries about his broken state, our MC panics internally, knowing the Emperor will target his sister once he realizes he escaped. Driven by fierce resolve, he vows to shatter every single Imperial bastard into pieces to keep Noel safe. Seeing his unwavering determination, Chia speaks up, telling him that if he truly intends to fight the Empire, there is actually a specific way that can fully heal his severely damaged body. She reveals a closely guarded secret of the Beastkin race, a legendary place known as the Spring of Moonlit Waters. Intrigued by her words, the young man questions what the sacred spring actually is. Chia explains that bathing in that spring will heal even the deepest wounds inflicted upon his very life force. Dwellings of spirit power make the spring capable of restoring any injury, though access is strictly forbidden to anyone without the chief's direct permission. Yol hesitantly asks if it was really alright for her to reveal such a sacred secret to a human like him. He stares at her in disbelief, worried that she might get into serious trouble with her tribe for sharing that information. Chiha nervously laughs and insists it's fine, though her panicked expression clearly proves she wasn't supposed to tell anyone. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echo outside the room, instantly putting our hero on high alert. Reacting instantly, Yol pulls Chia down and covers her mouth, muffling her noises as soldiers pass right outside the window. Outside, a guard yells to his squad to search every corner of the town for a Beastkin girl, a dangerous archer, and another suspect. Hearing the guard order them to find a guy in rags, Chia cheekily points at Yol's tattered clothes while he chuckles at their persistence. Chia suddenly stands up with a determined look, prompting Yol to ask what she's planning to do. When she proposes acting as a decoy so he can escape, Yol immediately refuses, knowing how dangerous that would be for her. She reassures him that it's fine, proudly stating that beasts can never forget a favor owed to them. Giving him a sweet smile, she introduces herself as Chiha Abyssinian and asks for his name in return. Looking away, our MC answers that right now, he is simply going by the name Yol. Outside, the guard captain shouts that they are searching this run-down house next, leaving them no time to spare. Panicking internally, Yol desperately tries to think of another way out of this trap. Outside, a high-ranking platoon leader berates the guards for wasting time when General Gates is about to arrive. He alerts them that an escaped convict is on the loose and orders everyone to immediately lock down all borders. As the soldiers hurry away, Yol lets out a massive sigh of relief while Chia watches in surprise. Chia chuckles in relief at their lucky narrow escape, while Yol collapses onto his knees, completely exhausted. Seeing him looking so dead serious, Chia tilts her head in confusion as he turns to her with a desperate plea. Knowing they have no time left before the border locks down completely, Yeol begs her to take him to the spring right now. Chia suddenly puts two and two together, asking if he was the escaped convict the soldiers were hunting for. Yeol confirms it, stressing that he must escape the country and reach Rada before the entire border is sealed tight. Seeing his earnest resolve, Chia smiles softly and agrees to lead him to her home. Under the cover of night, the two quietly make their way through a dense, glowing forest. Chia leads the path forward, carefully guiding him through the hidden trails. Struggling to keep up, Yeol realizes this is his first time seeing a beaskin, as slave trading was illegal in his kingdom. He recalls that beaskin possess spirit abilities, but female beaskin are often targeted by traffickers and sold for exorbitant prices. Noticing him panting heavily, Chia stops and kindly asks if he needs to take a break. Pushing through the physical pain, Yeol asks why she risked going into a human town when hunters target her kind. She explains that she disguises herself to buy supplies, leading Yeol to wonder why her tribe lives so close to humans. Chia clarifies that her tribe stays nearby to guard the sacred spring, protected by spirits and secret paths only they know. Hearing her explanation, our hero silently nods, finally understanding the burden her people carry. Knowing no human has ever bathed in the spring before, Yeol can only pray that its magical healing power will work for him. Chia warns him that the chief will never grant permission, meaning they must sneak in secretly before anyone notices. Suddenly, a stern voice calls out Chia's name, instantly freezing both of them in place. Emerging from the darkness, a massive figure stands before them, demanding to know who the human is. Meanwhile, an intimidating commander with an eye patch interrogates a battered guard at the run-down house. Radiating immense pressure, the commander fumes in rage over his men failing to report suspicious activity immediately. He maniacally mocks the guard for running back in fear after losing a comrade, calling him absolute trash. Refusing to hear any excuses, the ruthless commander slashes his sword down to execute his own useless soldier on the spot. Looking at the bloody scene, General Gates scoffs at the mention of an archer and beaskin, doubting the escapee has any real allies. His gaze lands on a puddle of blood left behind on the ground. A cruel, sadistic smile spreads across his face as a dark idea comes to mind. Kneeling down, he forms a magical hand sign and begins chanting an incantation over the blood. Under the influence of his mana, the spilled blood begins to boil and transform into something unnatural. Watching it all, the soldiers recognize this as Gates' unique magic, an extraordinary power granted only to a chosen few. He brings a drop of the blood to his mouth, tasting it to analyze its essence. He instantly confirms that the blood belongs to a beaskin. Commands the blood construct to move, as the red liquid reshapes itself into a slithering hound on the ground. Laughing like a madman, he commands the blood tracker to lead him directly to their prey. The blood serpent surges forward into the night, guiding Gates and his army straight toward Chiha's location. Meanwhile, high up in the mountains, the scene shifts to the hidden village of the beaskin tribe. In the center of the village, Yeol and Chiha are bound with ropes and surrounded by hostile villagers. The beaskin chief screams at Chiha in a rage, demanding to know why she brought a filthy human to their secret sanctuary. Chiha fiercely defends him, shouting back that Yeol is a good person who saved her life. The chief refuses to listen, condemning all humans as violent, inferior savages who murder their own kind and cannot hear the spirits. The surrounding villagers scoff at Chiha, mocking her lack of wisdom and bringing up her late mother to shame her. Tears fill Chia's eyes as the harsh words cut deep, while Yeol watches her in silence. Livid with anger, the chief calls her an incompetent fool and forbids her from ever leaving the village again. Desperate to help Yeol, Chia drops to her hands and knees, begging the chief to show mercy. Seeing her bow so humbly for his sake, Yeol also asks the chief for permission to use the moon pool. Enraged by her submissive behavior, the chief raises his fist to strike Chia for humbling herself before a human. Before the blow can land, Yeol shifts his bound body in front of Chiha, shielding her from the chief's strike. Stopping his fist, the chief glares down at the young man, asking what he thinks he's trying to accomplish. Yeol speaks up boldly, mocking the chief by asking if the beaskin's supposed connection to noble spirits was all just a lie. He adds that from what he sees, beaskin are just as arrogant and narrow-minded as the humans they despise. Outraged, the chief roars that their spirit-blessed race is far superior and nothing like corrupt humans. Yeol pulls no punches, declaring that if spirits teach them to mistreat their own people, then those spirits are completely worthless. Enraged by the blasphemy, the chief sentences Yeol to death, declaring he will be executed at sunrise tomorrow. Chia tries to stop them, but the chief orders the guards to lock the human in a cell until dawn. Left helpless on the ground, Chia whispers in despair, unable to understand the chief's cruelty. Yeol is thrown into a dark, heavily barred cell inside the village dungeon. Lying on the cold stone floor, Yeol regrets provoking the chief so heavily, only hoping that Chiha won't suffer for his big mouth. Knowing he can't afford to die here with his sister still in danger, Yeol forces himself back onto his feet. He slams his shoulder against the cell door, trying to break the heavy wooden bars by force. Seeing that the sturdy cage won't budge an inch, he realizes physical strength alone won't get him out. With no other options left, Yeol decides to risk manifesting a hero spirit to obliterate the cage. Closing his eyes, he focuses all his willpower to summon the power without losing consciousness from strain. As he recites the ancient spell, massive blue energy surges around him, filling the entire dungeon with magic. In a flash of light, a phantom swordsman materializes above him and cleanly slashes through the reinforced cell bars. The strike cuts through his restraints, freeing Yol's hands from the heavy ropes. Exhausted and catching his breath, he manages to stand amid the wreckage of his broken cell. But forcing his magic causes immediate backlash, leaving him groaning in severe pain. The immense strain overwhelms his damaged body, causing him to cough up a mouthful of blood. Wiping the blood from his lips, he refuses to give up and forces himself forward. Barely able to stand, our hero resorts to crawling out of the dungeon, dragging his battered body across the floor. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out his name, making him look up in surprise. It's Chia, running down into the dungeon with a bright, joyful smile on her face. Amazed that he actually broke out on his own, she gently checks on him while he quietly apologizes. Chia urges him to escape since the guards are gone, but Yol hesitates, worried she'll face terrible punishment for helping him again. Looking him straight in the eye, Chia firmly states that she will always stand by the person who saved her. She calls him a truly strange human, noting that he treats her with respect, bows, and actually calls her by her name. With genuine emotion, she admits that his kindness made her truly happy, giving her every reason to help him. Moved by her words, a gentle smile touches Yol's face as he softly thanks her. Supporting his weakened body on her shoulder, the two quickly make their move to get out. As they sneak through the forest under the moonlight, Chia asks him to forgive her father's harsh behavior. Surprised, Yol learns for the first time that the village chief is actually Chia's father. She reveals that the Empire brutally murdered her mother years ago, instilling a deep, bitter hatred for all humans in her father's heart. Yol asks if she feels the same hatred, but Chia explains that while she despises the Empire, she knows not all humans are bad. She admits with a sad smile that because of her beliefs, the entire village, including her own father, despises her. Yol warmly reassures her that he doesn't care what the village thinks, because he truly values her for who she is, bringing a joyful smile back to her face. Under the glowing night sky, Chia feels reassured that her trust in him was not a mistake. Moments later, they arrive before a massive, glowing ancient tree deep within the sanctuary. Chia clasps her hands together and recites a sacred incantation to unseal the hidden entrance. Yol watches in sheer awe as magical barriers part right before his eyes. Revealed before them is the moon pool, a serene, sparkling body of water brimming with spiritual energy. Staring at the pool, Yol realizes this is the sacred sanctuary the beastkin have guarded for generations. He asks about the guards, but Chia reassures him that everyone is occupied at the village, leaving the pool completely unguarded. Knowing she must return before being missed, Chia bids him farewell, wishing his sister a full recovery. Exhaling deeply, Yol expresses his heartfelt gratitude to her one last time. Removing his top, our protagonist steps toward the pool, hoping its divine powers can truly heal a human body. Suddenly, Chia begins stripping off her outer clothes right in front of him, flustering Yol completely. Flustered, Yol quickly submerges himself in the water, trying to keep his composure while looking away. Entering the pool beside him, Chia clasps her hands and begins chanting a prayer to invoke the spirits. Watching her bathed in the ethereal blue light of the pool, Yol is completely mesmerized by her breathtaking presence. She offers the sacred water toward the full moon, asking the spirits to bestow healing upon the wary warrior. Feeling the spirit magic activate, Yol relaxes his mind and lets himself submerge into the pool. As he floats weightlessly underwater, the divine spring begins repairing his damaged life force. Chia smiles softly down at him, happy to see the ritual working as intended. With the healing ritual complete, she sits by the water's edge, patiently waiting for him to awaken fully restored. Sitting by the water's edge, Chia suddenly turns her head as a distant commotion catches her attention. Her feline senses pick up something terribly wrong, making her eyes widen in shock. Looking toward her village, she sees massive flames and smoke engulfing the night sky. Covering her ears, she listens closely as distant screams ring through the air. Cries for help from her fellow villagers reach her ears, filling her heart with dread. Horrified by the sudden inferno, she realizes her home is under brutal attack. Fearing for her people and her father, she screams out in desperation. Without wasting another second, she turns around and sprints back toward the burning village. Meanwhile, the entire beastkin settlement has been transformed into a roaring sea of fire. General Gates laughs like a demon amidst the flames, ordering his men to burn every single house to the ground. His soldiers watch in awe as Gates unleashes his deadly signature technique, Blood Surge. His unique magic not only allows him to freely manipulate blood at will, but by tracking a single drop of beastkin blood, he easily located their hidden sanctuary. Gates is one of the 3 generals serving Emperor Veld, each wielding a terrifying god-like form of unique magic. Standing amidst the destruction, the village chief furiously confronts General Gates for defiling their sacred land. Gates turns around with a mocking smirk, amused by the old chief's defiance. The chief roars at the imperial forces, ordering the trespassers to get out of their village immediately. Hearing the chief's demands, Gates and his soldiers burst out laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Gates cackles maniacally, mocking the chief for making demands while surrounded and helpless. When the chief asks how they found this hidden place, Gates reveals that they tracked the blood left behind by one of their own kin. Gates belittles the entire tribe as pathetic cowards hiding in the woods, pushing the chief to his breaking point. Losing his patience, Gates yells at him to shut up and hand over Yol Mainu immediately. When Gates demands the beast-skin girl who aided the escape as well, the chief stubbornly lies, claiming he knows nothing. Gates smirks, amused by the idea of beast-skin protecting a human criminal. The chief laughs bitterly, declaring that beast-skin protecting a human is entirely impossible. He adds with fierce pride that cooperating with the murderous empire is even more impossible. Unimpressed by the chief's defiance, Gates casually reaches for the hilt of his sword. In a split second, Gates draws his blade and brutally severs the chief's hand with a single slash. The chief gasps in pain as blood sputters from his severed limb. Blood splatters across Gates' face as he wears a sadistic, terrifying grin. Clutching his bloody stump, the chief refuses to bend, shouting that the empire deserves to fall. Deeming him useless, Gates cold-heartedly impales the chief through the chest, letting him collapse into the flames. Bleeding profusely on the ground, the dying chief spits out his hatred, calling the Imperial soldiers monsters. Gates laughs uncontrollably, mocking the chief for calling him a beast when he's the one dying like one. Raising his bloody blade, General Gates boasts about taking out the trash and asks who wants to die next. Suddenly, a volley of lethal arrows comes flying out of the dark woods straight toward him. Gates effortlessly parries every single arrow with a swift flick of his sword. Turning toward the attacker, Gates taunts the newcomer with a cruel smirk. It's Chiha, having arrived just in time, her eyes burning with rage as she demands to know why humans are destroying her home. Seeing Chiha standing before him, Gates licks his lips creepily, eyeing her as his next prize. Chiha's eyes widen in horror as she spots her father lying dead on the ground in a pool of blood. General Gates confronts her, demanding to know where Yahello Manhwa is hiding before she meets the same fate. He maliciously taunts her, claiming Yahello is a curse who brings ruin to everyone around him, taking credit for slaughtering her parents. As Gates' manic laughter fills the air, Chiha stands frozen in shock. She remembers Yahello telling her how the Empire tortured his parents and kept him captive for 5 agonizing years. Overcome with grief and rage, Chiha extends her sharp claws and roars that she will never forgive the Empire. Fueled by vengeance, she lunges forward and pounces toward General Gates with all her strength. However, Gates easily parries her desperate claw strike with the flat of his blade. She unleashes a furious flurry of slashes, but the general effortlessly blocks every single attack. Inspired by her bravery, the remaining beast-skin villagers rally together to fight back and avenge their chief. The villagers mob the Imperial soldiers, overwhelming them through sheer numbers and desperation. Watching his guards struggle, Gates sighs in annoyance at his men panicking over a simple revolt. Chiha leaps in for another strike, refusing to give him a single second to breathe. Unfazed, Gates brings his fingers together and begins chanting a dark blood incantation. The blood pools around dead soldiers burst into life, turning into sharp, tendril-like whips of red mana. The blood tendrils surge forward, instantly entangling Chiha and binding the revolting beastskin where they stand. With a simple gesture, Gates commands the blood tendrils to mercilessly decapitate one of the rebellious villagers. Terrified, his soldiers whisper about how Gates once conquered an entire castle single-handedly using this versatile blood manipulation. Gates glares back at his babbling men, cutting off their chatter instantly. The soldiers freeze in terror, fearful that their commander might execute them next. Gates barks at them to stop slacking and finish off the remaining beastskin rebellion immediately. Re-energized by fear, the Imperial guards rush in to slaughter the helpless, bound villagers. Gates cackles madly as his soldiers begin massacring the remaining beastskin. Screams of agony ring out across the burning village as the brutal massacre unfolds. Gates casually finishes off another fallen villager, piercing him with his blade. Despite being restrained, Chiha glares up at him, defiantly asking if that's the best he can do. She roars with unyielding spirit, refusing to break under his cruel tyranny. Amused by her defiance, Gates smirks and decides to break her spirit personally. Struggling against her blood bindings, she vows that she will never lose to a monster like him. In response, Gates tightens the blood tendrils, constricting her entire body. The sharp blood tendrils bite deep in her flesh, causing her to gasp in pain. Suspended in place by the thorny blood vines, Chiha demands that he release her at once. Grabbing her by the throat, Gates forces her to look at the carnage, blaming her directly for bringing ruin upon her people. He makes her stare at the lifeless corpses of her fellow villagers, crushing her heart with guilt. Overwhelmed by horror, tears stream down her face as the weight of the tragedy destroys her soul. She sobs helplessly, unable to deny the horrific sight before her. With her spirit crushed, Gates smirks, declaring that it's finally time for his reward. He grabs her head and creepily licks her cheek, disgustingly musing about sampling beastskin flesh like the nobles do. Before he can do anything worse, a soldier runs up to interrupt, infuriating the general. The panicked guard points toward the sky, telling his commander to look at what's approaching. The soldier points toward the village entrance, where a lone shadow has just appeared amidst the smoke. Standing in the entryway is Yahello, his eyes filled with cold resolve as he arrives at the scene. Seeing him, Gates bursts into a sick, twisted laugh, boasting about how much he missed his prized prisoner. Still bound in blood tendrils, Chiha looks at him with tear-filled eyes, whispering his name. A few minutes earlier, before Yahello made his grand entrance at the village entrance, he was still floating underwater in the tranquil moon pool. The pool's divine waters float around his body, absorbing the spiritual energy into his soul. He marveled at how the moonlight seeped through his skin, restoring his exhausted vitality. But suddenly a violent wave of dark magic shook the entire surrounding area. Opening his eyes underwater, Yol instantly sensed the ominous aura radiating from the direction of the village. He recognized that vile energy as belonging to General Gates Belget, the sadistic imperial officer. Realizing that Gates had tracked them down, panic surged through Yol's chest. His thoughts immediately turned to Chiha, fearing for her safety. Looking around, he realized Chiha was no longer at the spring, having rushed back to protect her people alone. Cursing his luck, Yol kicked toward the surface, refusing to let her fight that monster by herself. Knowing Chiha's reckless kindness would get her killed, Yol swore to reach her in time. As he concentrated his mana, his consciousness shifted into his mental realm, the Soul's Throne. Standing inside the cathedral was the hero spirit Joan of Arc, scolding him for his foolishness. She reprimanded him for abandoning his recovery, warning that if he died, all the hero spirits tied to his soul would perish with him. Yol looked up at her firmly, assuring her that the spring's power had restored enough of his strength to stay conscious. He demanded that she lend him her power, declaring that he was going to save Chiha no matter what. Joan let out a small chuckle, amused that a mere human was brazenly threatening a legendary hero spirit. However, she stood her ground, stating that her soul was brought back for a single purpose, to eliminate all weakness. She refused to cooperate with his Knave rescue mission, claiming their ideals and visions for the world were fundamentally opposed. Yol lowered his voice, arguing back that their visions were not different at all. He declared that his ultimate goal was also the total annihilation of weakness from this world. Joan gasped in shock as Yol explained that he inherited her final memories when their souls fused. The blonde knight remained silent as her painful past was brought back to light. He recounted her tragic end, burned at the stake after being betrayed by the very weak people she fought so hard to protect. Yol saw right through her facade, pointing out that what she truly hated wasn't others, but her own helplessness in the end. Her eyes widened in anger as Yol laid bare the buried trauma of her soul. He emphasized that her anger stemmed from failing to protect her loved ones due to her own lack of strength. Yol admitted that he shared that exact same agony, having lost his own parents because he was too weak to save them. Vowing never to lose anyone again, he swore to destroy all oppressors and erase weakness from existence. Stunned by his conviction, Joan listened speechless as Yol asked once again for her power. He promised to forge a world where no one would ever have to suffer from weakness again. He declared that together they would annihilate every single injustice plaguing this world. Joan stared at him in silence before letting out a soft, amused giggle. She covered her mouth, unable to hold back her amusement at his bold declaration. With a thrilling, dangerous smile, Joan conceded that he was truly out of his mind, and agreed to lend him her power. Yol chuckles that they both share a bit of madness, prompting Joan to finally grant him her power under one condition. She tells him he must prove he has the strength required to turn his insane dream into reality. Back in the physical world, Yol emerges from the moon pool, acknowledging that while not fully healed, his recovery is enough to fight. Spotting the smoke billowing over the village, he vows to save Chiha at all costs. Praying for her safety, he prepares to launch himself into battle. Back at the present, Yol stands in the burning village with the summoned hero spirit Joan of Arc at his side. Glaring at the commander, Yol confirms that it was indeed Gates Belget behind this atrocious massacre. As Joan marvels at being resurrected into the physical world, Yol reminds her that their immediate goal is rescuing Chiha. Gates stares back with an arrogant smirk, amused by the intruder's arrival. Yol's eyes burn with pure hatred as he declares that Gates is a monster who cannot be allowed to live. Flashing a thrill-seeking smile, Joan readily agrees to eliminate the target. In the blink of an eye, Joan leaps into the air and thrusts her massive lance straight down toward the Imperial soldiers. She descends like a meteor, unleashing a wave of divine blue flames across the battlefield. Gates watches the display, tauntingly noting that this divine warrior looks nothing like the rumored archer. He immediately activates his blood magic, summoning sharp red tendrils to entangle her. The blood tendrils wrap tightly around Joan's body, attempting to lock her in place. Unfazed by the blood traps binding her, Joan casually looks back at Gates with utter disdain. The Imperial soldiers cheer arrogantly, telling their comrades to capture Joan and use her as a prize. Joan smirks mockingly, calling the crude soldiers beasts and questioning if Gates is just their zookeeper. Gates grins wickedly, warning her that she won't be smiling for much longer. Surrounding Imperial guards step forward, preparing to unleash their spells directly at her. They fire a massive volley of fiery blasts, engulfing Joan in a towering inferno. Flames billow high into the night, making the guards believe they've won. But as the smoke clears, Joan emerges completely unharmed, crouching gracefully amidst the ashes. Looking up through the smoke, a dangerous, confident smile plays on her lips. Panicked, an Imperial soldier charges forward, swinging his blade wildly. Joan executes an effortless backflip, soaring high above his attack without breaking a sweat. Mid-air, she clasped her hands in prayer, asking the Lord to grant her divine judgment over the weak. Opening her eyes, magical crosshairs automatically lock onto every Imperial soldier on the ground. Raising her lance, she calls down a devastating rain of holy light pillars from the heavens. The divine light beams pierce cleanly through the guards, annihilating them in a bloody flash. Gates stares in sheer terror, utterly baffled by a spell unlike any magic he's ever witnessed. Floating divine in the air, Joan scoffs at his ignorance, declaring her power to be the direct work of God. With a holy smirk, she promises that this light of salvation will personally guide them all to the afterlife. Landing gracefully among the fallen bodies, she smiles at the beautiful devastation left in her wake. Turning to Yol, she praises his soul's energy, admitting it's far greater than she ever expected. Joan looks down at Gates standing amidst the carnage, mocking him for dying so pitifully in a place like this. Raising her lance toward Gates, she offers to send him to join his men in an instant, but Gates interrupts. Bringing his hands together in a spell sign, Gates chants a command to absorb and steal all surrounding magic power. The blood of all the slaughtered soldiers bursts into a crimson tempest, obeying his command as Gates prepares his ultimate move. Gates cackles madly as his blood magic drains the life force directly from his fallen soldier's body. The soldier's corpse turns into a shriveled mummy as Gates absorbs its blood into himself. Horrified, the surviving guards plead with Gates to stop, but he cold-heartedly replies that even in death, they should be honored to serve the Empire. The guard stares at his commander in sheer disbelief at such ruthless betrayal. Meanwhile, Yol and Joan watch closely as Gates targets Yol, addressing him as the Prince of Calamity. Clad head to toe in crimson blood armor, Gates rants about how the ear Yol bit off years ago still throbs with pain. Yol roars back in anger, demanding that Gates call him Yoru rather than that cursed title. Gates taunts him relentlessly, reminding him that his kingdom and his parents were destroyed because of him. Yol grits his teeth in rage as Gates cackles, mocking his tragic existence. With his blood armor fully formed, Gates asks with a cruel smirk if they are ready to begin. Surrounding them, the burning village sets a dark, apocalyptic backdrop for the duel. Gates lunges forward in his blood armor, brandishing a heavy crimson trident. He thrusts his weapon at blinding speed, aiming directly at Yol. Yol's eyes widen in shock as he realizes just how insanely fast Gates moves in that armor. Gates unleashes his technique Blood Roche blood-stained spear. A massive thrust of blood energy shoots forward, tearing up the ground toward Yol. Yol braces for impact, unable to dodge the incoming blast in time. In the nick of time, Joan steps in front of him and deflects the deadly blood spear with her lance. The deflected energy crashes into the nearby burning buildings, causing a massive explosion. Flames burst high into the sky, but Joan stands firm as Yol's shield. Joan turns her sharp blue gaze toward Gates, telling him not to get reckless. Stepping between Gates and Yol, Joan firmly declares that she will be his opponent. Accepting her challenge, Gates charges at Joan, eager to cut her down first. Joan locks her eyes on his incoming weapon, meeting his charge head-on. Their weapons collide with immense force, triggering a violent explosion of blue and red magic. Ducking beneath his wild swing, Joan maneuvers deftly around his guard. Seizing the opening, she drives the sharp point of her lance straight into Gates' chest. But instead of flinching, Gates wears a creepy, knowing grin on his face. Her lance penetrates his armor, only to get trapped as the fluid blood thickens around the blade. Joan gasps in surprise, feeling as if her weapon struck a dense liquid rather than solid armor. Suddenly, a sharp blood needle erupts from the ground behind Joan, catching her off guard. The blood needle slashes cleanly across Joan's waist, spilling her blood. Joan retreats back to Yol's side, holding her bleeding waist in pain. Gates smirks triumphantly, celebrating his successful trap. Holding her wound, Joan brushed off the damage, claiming a scratch like that meant nothing to her. But suddenly, Yol coughs up a spray of blood behind her, shocking Joan completely. Clutching his chest in agony, Yol realizes the horrifying truth behind Lord Simon's earlier warning. Because Joan's soul is bound to his, any physical injury she sustains directly damages Yol's own soul. Realizing Yol's body will break if she takes more hits, Joan knows she must dodge every single attack from here on. Gates watches them with a sinister grin, ready to exploit this fatal weakness to crush them both. Joan acknowledges that dodging every attack is easier said than done, before resolving to finish the fight immediately. Gates raises his flaming crimson trident, declaring he can't keep Emperor Veld waiting any longer. Gritting her teeth, Joan realizes they need a new strategy to break through his blood armor. Leaning close to her, Yol whispers that he has a plan and asks if she'll follow his lead. Ready to execute their strategy, the duo stand side by side facing the Imperial General. Hearing Yol's plan, a sharp, amused smirk spreads across Joan's face. In a flash, Joan dashes forward, thrusting her lance with blinding speed. But her strike passes clean through Gates' body, revealing it to be nothing more than a mirage. Gates cackles madly, mocking her for falling for such a simple trick. He summons his ultimate technique, Blood Rouge Blood Spirits Forest, manifesting a sky full of deadly blood tridents. The crimson spears rain down from the heavens, pulverizing the entire battlefield in explosions. As the dust settles, Joan's silhouette emerges from the smoke, seemingly cornered. Spotting her through the haze, Gates leaps in for the kill, thrusting his trident straight at her chest. His trident impales her body completely, but Joan doesn't even flinch. Gates gasps in sheer disbelief as he feels zero resistance against his blade. Joan's body begins dissolving into shimmering light, revealing that she was the illusion all along. Realizing he was tricked, terror flashes across Gates' eyes. A soldier screams a warning as the real Joan materializes directly behind Gates in the air. Clasped in prayer, Joan chants a divine curse, calling down holy retribution upon the general. Radiant light bursts around her as targeted magical seals lock directly onto Gates. A colossal pillar of holy energy crashes down from the sky, engulfing the Imperial General. Gates screams in agony, raising his blood trident to desperately block the divine blast. The holy beam shatters his blood armor to pieces, burning Gates alive as he roars in sheer humiliation. His blood armor disintegrates into ash, leaving the general broken and defeated. Overwhelmed by divine power, Gates crashes heavily onto the scorched earth. A massive explosion shakes the forest as the remaining magical shockwave dissipates. Watching the smoke rise, the Imperial Guards tremble in sheer panic, unable to accept their general's defeat. Overcome with fear, the surviving soldiers scramble to retreat and carry their fallen commander away. Joan lowers her lance, marveling at how Yul came up with using light refraction to create a perfect illusion in an instant. Yul steps up beside her, exhausted but relieved that their gambit worked. Wiping blood from his mouth, Yul explains that he knew it was possible because John's light magic could bend heat and air. Joan is thoroughly impressed, recognizing that Yul's tactical adaptability and quick thinking are truly abnormal. Watching him walk past, she realizes that Yul's potential as a spirit master is virtually bottomless. Yul's eyes land on Chiha, who is lying motionless on the ground as the blood bindings dissolve. Rushing to her side, Yul gently cradles her in his arms, desperately calling out her name. Chiha weakly blinks her eyes open, looking up at his worried face. Suddenly remembering what happened, horror fills her eyes as she gasps for her father. Ignoring her pain, Chiha breaks free from Yul's grip and scrambles toward her father's lifeless body. Clinging to her father's cold corpse, she weeps uncontrollably, begging him to open his eyes. Her heartbreaking cries echo across the burning ruins of her home, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Chiha desperately shakes her father's body, tears pouring down her face as she begs him to wake up. Overcome with sorrow, she lets out an agonizing scream that echoes across the burning ruins. Suddenly, a faint, trembling whisper gasps her name, stopping her in her tracks. Miraculously, her father opens his eyes slightly, weakly comparing her loud voice to her late mother's. Chiha promises to get him medical help, but her father softly interrupts, stating that the spirits are already guiding him away. Refusing to accept it, Chiha holds him close as he sincerely apologizes for treating her so harshly in the past. He admits that his strictness stemmed purely from a desperate desire not to lose her like he lost her mother. He recalls how Chiha inherits her mother's beautiful looks, kind personality, and her wish for peace with humans. He painfully remembers how her mother was betrayed and murdered by the Empire after trusting them. Tears mix with blood on his face as he confesses his eternal guilt over failing to save his wife. He reveals that seeing Chiha always reminded him of his failure, fueling his self-hatred and fear. He explains that although he knew Chiha cared for humans, he couldn't risk losing his only remaining family. He confesses that he tried to force her to hate humans solely to protect her from suffering her mother's tragic fate. Crying tears of regret, he chokes up blood as his remaining life force rapidly drains away. Chiha desperately begs him to save his breath, cradling his head in her arms. Weakly reaching up to touch her cheek, he softly asks her to smile for him one last time. With tears streaming down her face, Chiha struggles to force a gentle smile through her grief. Seeing her smile, her father's eyes soften as he marvels at how much she resembles her mother. Content with her smile, the old chief slowly closes his eyes. In his final breath, he sees his late wife's spirit standing warmly beside their daughter. Whispering a final apology, his hand limply slips away as he passes away peacefully. Chiha stares down in disbelief as the reality of his death settles in. Seeing his hand fall completely still, her heart breaks into a million pieces. She throws herself onto his body, screaming out in utter despair for her lost father. Sobbing bitterly against his chest, she questions why fate had to be so cruel to her family. Standing silently behind her, Yul softly apologizes for bringing this catastrophe to her home. Guilt weighs heavily on Yul's chest, blaming himself for involving her peaceful village in his war. Looking away, Yul begins to fear that Gates's cruel words were true, that he truly is a curse. But through her tears, Chiha weakly speaks up, telling Yul that none of this is his fault. Turning to face him, she roars with fiery conviction that the Empire alone is responsible for this tragedy. Standing tall amidst the burning ruins, she vows never to forgive the Empire and swears to avenge her family. Yul stares at her in shock, stunned by her sudden, fierce transformation. Recalling his goal, Chiha declares that she will join his cause and fight alongside him to crush the Empire. But Yul looks her dead in the eye and firmly refuses, stating he cannot bring her along. Chia's eyes widen in shock and hurt, demanding to know why he's rejecting her. Yul explains that the Empire is too dangerous and he can't guarantee her safety, but Chiao insists she doesn't need protection. Overcome with emotion, Yul yells that he simply cannot bear to watch anyone else die because of him. Chia clenches her fist tightly, struggling against his refusal. Softening his voice, Yul asks her to understand, reminding her that her father died wanting her to stay safe. Standing amidst the ashes of her village, Chiha whispers that her parents and villagers will never rest in peace if she gives up now. Filled with grief and rage, Chiha desperately cries out that she has to avenge her father and the others because she's the only one left who can do it. Hearing her desperate cry, Yor stares back in frustration, visibly annoyed at the overwhelming burden the girl is placing on herself. He remembers his own struggle, knowing that he's the only one who can protect his little sister, which means dying here was never an option for him either. Looking at her, our MC realizes Chiha is in the exact same position he was back then, completely alone and fighting for her family's sake. With a serious look, Yoru asks if she's truly determined, warning her that he can't guarantee her safety if she decides to come along. Without a second of hesitation, Chiha firmly replies that she's dead serious and will keep fighting even if she has to face everything completely alone. Seeing the unyielding resolve in her eyes, Yoru accepts her determination and agrees to let her join him on his journey. Extending his open hand out to her with a warm smile, our hero tells her that from now on, they will walk this path together. Chia looks at him in complete awe as Yoru gently calls out her name, overwhelmed that someone is finally standing by her side. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, the bee-skinned girl leaps directly into his arms to wrap him in a tight hug. Caught completely off guard by the sudden affection, Yoru can barely react as she firmly clings onto him. In adorable display of affection, our protagonist stammers out her name in surprise while she squeezes him tightly. Crying tears of joy, Chiha repeatedly thanks him while rubbing her cheek against his face, forcing an embarrassed Yoru to tell her to calm down and let go. Looking straight into his eyes, Chiha softly declares that Yoru isn't a calamity like others say, promising that she will prove it to the world. Resting softly against his chest, she thanks him once more from the bottom of her heart, touching our hero deeply with her sincere words. The two stand quietly amidst the burning village, holding each other close in a rare moment of warmth before their dangerous journey begins. Quickly regaining her composure, Chia asks if Yoru is okay and insists they leave immediately for Lada before the Empire forces return to the area. She explains that the beastskin have secret routes unknown to humans, assuring him that the Empire won't be able to track them down along those hidden paths. Excited to get moving, she tells Yoru to wait right there while she quickly prepares everything they need for the journey ahead. Watching from another realm, the blonde female knight comments on his decision, questioning if our hero is being far too soft by saving and adopting Chia. Yoru replies firmly that leaving Chia behind was impossible, as turning his back on someone in his past situation would be the same as abandoning his own self. Impressed yet amused by his reckless mindset, she smirks and remarks that he is even crazier than a typical hero. Closing her eyes, she summons Yoru to meet at the Seat of Souls, informing him that she has something important to share. The scene shifts to the mysterious realm known as the Seat of Souls, where legendary heroic figures from different times and places gather around a giant table. Among the heroic spirits present is a skilled blonde elf archer carefully tuning his bow while resting under the shade of a tree. Beside him, an elegant dark-haired woman in a striking red dress relaxes comfortably on an ornate carpet. Nearby, a calm warrior sitting in deep meditation maintains his spiritual focus while taking in the peaceful atmosphere. Meanwhile, the female knight stands silently with her hands clasped in prayer, acting as the spiritual anchor for the domain. A masked figure identified as Simon Magus chuckles quietly to himself, clearly entertained by the unfolding events. Noticing his subtle laughter, the warrior sitting next to him points out that Simon seems to be in an exceptionally good mood today. Seaman explains that witnessing the combination of beastskin abilities, Fatspring, and ancient blood magic has sparked his intellectual curiosity. Seeing such rare and forbidden techniques in action provided him with the exact type of forgotten knowledge he was hoping to witness. The legendary Matsunaga Hishide bursts into loud laughter, agreeing that this new world never fails to fascinate him. He notes that even their stubborn female knight had a change of heart regarding Yoru, though he ponders how much they can really trust her judgment. Suddenly, Yoru's soul materializes right in front of them in a bright flash, prompting Matsunaga to welcome the young boy to their realm. Upon seeing Yoru arrive, the holy female knight lowers her posture as she prepares to speak directly with him. Before she can act, another voice from the group interrupts, telling the young lady to hold on for a moment. Sitting comfortably in his chair while smoking a cigar, a soldier in green uniform admits he remains unconvinced, having seen countless people who were all talk and no action. Identified as Che Guevara, the revolutionary grins with intrigue, pointing out that Yoru actually intends to start a full-blown revolution all by himself. Looking at the young man standing firm despite being tested by ancient spirits, she excitedly declares that this reckless drive is exactly what he loves to see. She offers one piece of advice, telling Yoru that if he intends to burn through life like a flame, he better burn as brightly as possible. Putting out his cigar, the revolutionary tells the other heroic spirits to quiet down and just watch how things unfold in silence. Hearing his words, the holy female knight remains quiet, taking a moment to process She's unwavering trust in the boy. Without saying another word, she turns on her heel and walks away from the meeting table toward Yoru. Approaching the young man in the grassy field of the spiritual domain, she drops down onto one knee directly in front of a surprised Yoru. Placing her hand over her chest, she formally pledges her support, declaring that her frustration toward her own past weakness will now be transformed into power to aid him on his treacherous journey ahead. Seeing her complete oath of loyalty, Che Guevara lets out a satisfied chuckle from the background. Following her lead, the revolutionary soldier also drops down onto one knee to offer his own allegiance. One by one, every single heroic spirit in the Seat of Soul bows down in unity, officially recognizing Yoru as their leader. Together as the souls bound to Yoru Minu, they swear a solemn oath to lend him their immense power whenever he needs it. Accepting their immense loyalty, Yoru resolves to walk this dangerous path side by side with all of them. He boldly declares that together, they will push forward on this unforgiving journey through hell. Returning to the physical world, the story transitions to a peaceful, sunlit forest path 4 days later. A small horse-drawn carriage rolls along the dirt road, carrying Yoru and Chia toward their next destination. Leaning out of the carriage in excitement, a hooded Chia points ahead and eagerly calls out to Yoru. Right past the tree line lies their target destination, the grand commercial city of Lada. Sitting cross-legged inside the wagon, Yoru playfully reminds her that they came to this city for serious business, not a vacation. Chiha cheerfully replies that she knows, while their friendly driver mentions how great Lada is for business, though he hints that the situation there currently is complicated. Intrigued, Yoru asks what he means, having heard that Lada was usually considered the prime spot to start a trade empire. The driver explains the political structure of Lada, revealing it is a merchant-ruled nation governed by 4 presidents and 4 directors beneath them. He explains that 2 months ago the head of the powerful Sabar family collapsed, leaving his young daughter as acting president while ambitious directors plot to steal her seat. He adds that the acting president is only 19 years old, despite being known as the brilliant top graduate of Sabar Academy. Hearing the unfamiliar terms, Chia gets confused, prompting the driver to laugh and explain that Sabar Academy is actually the greatest magic academy in the world. Upon hearing about the prestigious magic academy, Yoru's expression instantly hardens as something catches his attention. Before he can process the news, a sudden wave of intense killing intent sends a violent chill down his spine. Reacting instantly to the danger, our MMC leaps up and warns everyone in the carriage that an attack is coming. Out of nowhere, a massive fireball slams directly into the top of their wagon, instantly engulfing the structure in flames. The explosive force shatters the wooden wheels and snaps the carriage frame into pieces. Acting on pure instinct, Yoru grabs Chiha and dives out of the burning wreckage as it flips over onto the road. But the assault doesn't stop there, as a rain of deadly fireballs pours down from the sky to finish them off. The massive magical barrage creates a fiery explosion that completely obliterates the path and sends the horses scattering. Emerging from the smoke, Yoru hits the ground on all fours, while Chiha rushes to his side to check if he's hurt. Looking up through the dust, they find a dangerous female assassin wearing a fox mask and wielding a heavy mace standing right before them. Chia gasps in horror as she recognizes the overwhelming threat hovering directly over them. Without granting them a single second to recover, the assassin brutally swings her giant weapon down to crush them both. Watching the lethal blow descend upon Yoru, Chia screams out his name in sheer panic. But right as the weapon is about to strike, a glowing hand reaches up from within the smoke to meet the blow head-on. Summoning his newfound powers, the spirit of Matsunaga Hide manifests his energy, casually remarking that it's finally his turn to step into battle. Through hero manifestation, the powerful heroic spirit fully materializes beside Yoru, ready to obliterate their attacker. Smirking, Matsunaga Hide greets the enemy, casually mentioning that he's been waiting far too long for a good fight. Raising his bare hand, blue energy crackles around his palm as he prepares to absorb and unleash magic. Caught completely off guard, the masked assassin takes a sharp electrical shockwave straight to her body. Watching from behind, Chia is left utterly stunned that this mysterious warrior effortlessly stopped a massive strike with just one bare hand. Matsunaga effortlessly catches her follow-up blazing attack, completely nullifying the destructive flame magic with his aura. With a swift flick of his wrist, he reflects the concentrated energy back at her, forcing the assassin to gasp in shock. As Yoru expresses his gratitude for the save, Matsunaga chuckles boisterously, telling him not to worry about such a small favor. Looking ahead at the retreating assassin, Matsunaga warns our MC that the battle is far from over. The fox-masked attacker leaps back to create distance before immediately casting a massive magic circle in front of her staff. Channeling her mana, she summons a terrifying sphere of intense fire known as Blazing Sun. Recognizing the spell, Yoru urgently shouts to Matsunaga, warning him that she is unleashing a deadly fourth fusion, class firepower spell. Blazing Sun is a high-level fire spell that consumes massive mana to conjure a miniature sun capable of incinerating everything in its path. Unfazed by the devastating spell heading their way, Matsunaga simply smirks and holds up his open hand. The scorching miniature sun hurtles straight toward them, aimed directly at Matsunaga's waiting palm. The moment the explosive spell makes impact, he catches the blazing mass with his bare hand without flinching. Grunting with effort, the legendary warrior begins compressing and absorbing the overwhelming heat right into his body. Seeing her ultimate attack absorbed so easily, the masked assassin gasps in complete disbelief. Surrounding himself in concentrated blue aura, Matsunaga demands to know her identity, asking if she is one of the Empire's assassin dogs. When the assassin stays silent, he grins slyly and admits that he doesn't mind settling things without talk. Channeling the absorbed energy into his hands, he prepares his counterattack, declaring that sitting back and taking hits simply goes against his nature as a warrior. He releases his technique, Dual Path of Grace and Authority, sending an overwhelming torrent of blue energy tearing across the terrain. The explosive shockwave surges right beneath the assassin, engulfing her in a swirling vortex of force. Matsunaga Hide possesses the unique ability to absorb any form of energy with his bare hands and release it as catastrophic explosions. At maximum power, his technique can unleash an earth-shattering blast capable of vaporizing targets in an instant. As the dust settles, revealing a massive crater, Matsunaga clicks his tongue upon, realizing the assassin managed to escape at the last second. Stroking his chin, he confirms to Yoru that the attacker was definitely from the Empire, as no one else would be hunting him so aggressively. Yoru stands in shock, realizing that the Empire's dangerous influence has already infiltrated the commercial city of Lada. Feeling his manifestation limit approaching, Matsunaga turns to Yoru to offer a final warning. As his physical body fades away, the legendary spirit sternly reminds our hero to keep his guard up at all times. Looking out toward the distant skyline of Lada, Yoru steels his resolve for the challenges awaiting them inside. Soon after, the scene shifts to the imposing main entrance of Sabara Academy, guarded by two heavily armed sentries. As they approach the gates, Chia asks Yoru if he's visited before, surprised that he knew the exact route without hesitation. Yoru smiles and admits he came here once a long time ago, right as the guards cross their weapons to block their path. The guards demand they leave if they lack authorization, but Yoru politely explains he's here to visit his sister, which the guards immediately dismiss as a lie. Looking at Yoru's tattered cloak and worn-out clothes, the guards judged him harshly based on their appearance. Calling them filthy vagrants who tarnish the academy's reputation, the guards' insults instantly enrage Chia, who yells back in anger. As the guards shout for them to leave immediately, Chia fumes with rage, finding their arrogance completely unforgivable. While Chia continues throwing a tantrum over being called a vagrant, Yoru ponders how to get inside now that walking through the front door is impossible. Fed up with the guards' disrespect, Chia takes an aggressive step forward, determined to force her way inside. Telling Yoru to leave everything to her, Chia suddenly dashes away into the shadows before our hero can even stop her. Watching her disappear, a bewildered Yoru wonders what crazy scheme the Beastkin girl is plotting now. Looking up at the Grand Academy structures, Yoru reflects on finally arriving here, eager to reunite with Noel as soon as possible. Suddenly, Chia walks back over to him completely transformed, wearing a stylish school uniform that leaves Yoru stunned. Showing off her new outfit with a proud grin, she reveals that she snagged a matching male uniform for Yoru to put on as well. After reluctantly changing into the suit, Yoru nervously asks if this disguise will actually work, but an overconfident Chia insists they are official students now. Dressed as students, the two nonchalantly stroll right past the guards and straight through the main entrance. One of the guards glares intently at them as they walk by, making a nervous Yoru sweat profusely. Miraculously, the guards let them pass without questioning them, allowing the duo to successfully slip onto campus grounds. Once safely inside the courtyard, Chia throws her arms up in victory, cheering boisterously that their ridiculous plan actually worked. While they high-five in celebration, a pink-haired student watching from nearby suddenly recognizes Yoru's face. Revealed to be Lily Sabar, the student council president and top student of the academy, she mutters Yoru's full name in utter surprise. Unaware that they're being watched, Yoru approaches a pair of students in the courtyard to ask if they know a girl named Noel. The students scratch their heads, admitting they've never heard of anyone named Noel despite Yoru explaining she's been enrolled here for 5 years. They explain that with over 10,000 students enrolled at Sabara Academy, it's impossible for anyone to know every single student by name. Hearing that massive number, Chiho worries they'll never find her, but Yoru reassures her that Noel's bright and standout personality will make her easy to spot. 1 hour later, an exhausted Chia passes out on a park bench, while a defeated Yoru buries his face in his hand. Sitting up in frustration, Chia complains that after questioning 30 people, no one has ever heard of Noel, leading her to believe Noel must be a total loner. Before Yoru can figure out their next move, a student's loud shout alerts a faculty member to their location. A female student points them out to a muscular, imposing teacher, snitching that the duo has been bothering everyone with strange questions. The buff teacher steps forward with an intimidating grin, demanding to know their names and why they've been interrogating students. Yoru nervously claims they were just looking for a friend, but the teacher immediately asks to see their student IDs. As the two freeze up without any IDs to show, Student Council President Lily Sabar approaches the scene from behind. The teacher smugly threatens to call security to arrest them, only for a sharp female voice to command him to stop. Lily Sabar steps into view, her commanding presence instantly drawing the attention of everyone nearby. The teacher and students bow respectfully to President Lily, who casually lies that Yoru and Chia are actually her personal acquaintances. Turning her sharp, yellow eyes toward Yoru, she mockingly addresses him as Mr. Genius Mage. Yoru stares back in complete confusion, having no idea who this girl is or why she's addressing him like that. The scene shifts to the private student council president's office, where Lily brings the two inside. Sitting behind her massive desk, Lily glares at Yoru and coldly remarks that it has been a very long time. Feeling the heavy tension in the air, a sweating Yoru awkwardly bows his head and offers a nervous apology. But Lily's dark expression grows even scarier as she demands to know who on earth he actually is. When Chia asks if Yoru knows her, he admits he has zero clue, suggesting to Lily that she must have mistaken him for someone else. Outraged that he forgot her, Lily slams her hands on the desk and shouts her full name, Lily Sabar, right in his face. Chia suddenly connects the dots, asking if she's the famous daughter filling in for the collapsed president, which Lily proudly confirms. She boasts about her dual titles, holding the positions of both acting president of LADA and student council president of Sabara Academy. Yoru stares at her with a completely blank expression, still showing zero signs of recognizing her. Seeing his genuinely clueless face, Lily is completely dumbfounded that he truly doesn't remember her. Sweating nervously under her glare, Yoru listens as Lily angrily asks if he really forgot the shameless thing he did to her back then. Hearing that accusation, Chia instantly crosses her arms and calls Yoru a pervert, forcing our hero to frantically defend his innocence while Lily fumes in anger. Clenching her teeth in anger, Lily fumes that she hasn't forgotten what happened for even a single second. She recounts that 8 years ago, during joint training between their academies, the The two of them faced off in a mock magic battle on the final day. Selected as school representatives, Yoru was 12 years old at the time, while Lily was only 11. She yells at him, incredulous that he could forget such an important moment in her life. Being a prodigy chosen at 11, she possessed absolute confidence in her abilities when she summoned her ice dragon. However, as she points out, Yoru was on a completely different level. True genius among geniuses. She brought out her ultimate 4th fusion class spell, only for Yoru to effortlessly erase it using a basic 1st fusion class spell. To make matters worse, Yoru intentionally missed his counterattack to spare her, leaving her utterly humiliated and crying on the arena floor. As the vivid memory suddenly flashes back into his mind, Yoru lets out a quiet gasp of realization. Remembering everything, Yoru blurted out how she started crying hysterically until the match awkwardly ended, prompting an embarrassed Lily to scream at him for remembering that detail. Slumping back into her chair in defeat, Lily groans that he is truly the absolute worst. Regaining her composure, she admits she assumed he died when his kingdom fell, then directly asks why he has come to Sabara Academy. Looking straight at her, Yoru plainly states that his sole purpose is to find his sister, Noel. Lily scoffs, calling him hilariously selfish for abandoning his sister for 5 years only to suddenly reappear looking for her. Furious at her assumption, Chia steps in and explains that Yoru was imprisoned and tortured by the Empire for 5 years, yet still dragged his ruined body here to save Noel. Yoru quietly adds that his mana core is broken and he can no longer cast magic, admitting that he is no longer the genius she once fought. Lily gapes in shock, unable to process that the legendary prodigy of Minu has lost his ability to use magic completely. Swallowing his pride, Yoru desperately begs her to share any information she has regarding his sister's whereabouts. After a long pause, Lily sternly reveals that there is officially no student at Sabara Academy named Noel. Hearing those words, Yoru and Chia stare back in utter disbelief, unable to accept that she isn't here. Lily explains that to protect the princess of a fallen kingdom, she gave Noel an alias, Faye Avalonia, and the two became best friends. Learning she used an alias, a hopeful Yoru eagerly asks where his sister is right now. Lily's eyes darken with sorrow as she begins to reveal what happened to Noel a year ago. She reveals that 1 year ago, Noel suddenly vanished from the academy without a trace, leaving no clues behind. Shocked to his core, Yoru desperately asks if there's any idea where she could have disappeared to. Turning her back on them, Lily coldly dismisses them, stating she shared this information for Noel's sake, not his. Glaring over her shoulder, she makes it clear that she has no intention of aiding a brother who is absent when Noel needed him most. Meanwhile, in a dark, lavishly decorated estate elsewhere in the city, an ominous presence materializes. The fox-masked assassin from earlier drops to her knees to report to her superior. Standing over her is Mama Cho, known as Scorpion, a ruthless general of the Belize Empire's 3rd Legion. Looking down with cold blue eyes, General Mama Cho demands to know why her subordinate acted without orders. Cracking her whip menacingly, she scolds the assassin for engaging the Prince of Calamity without explicit authorization. She brutally lashes her subordinate across the face, mockingly asking what her beast-skin ears are even good for if she can't follow simple orders. Trembling on the floor, the assassin apologizes profusely, while the general notes that Yoru must suffer far more before their grand plan comes to fruition. Lifting the assassin's chin with a sadistic smile, she murmurs that every bit of despair is required for the ultimate, thrilling moment they are building toward. She then turns her attention to an older, corrupt merchant sitting on the sofa nearby. Identified as Hakan Shahamov, director of Lada and head of the Shahamov Trading Company, he greedily asks when his political desires will be granted. Mama Cho casts a terrifying shadowy glare toward him, immediately silencing his impudence. Terrified by her aura, Hakan frantically backs down, while the general assures him that their takeover plot is proceeding smoothly as planned. The greedy director grins evilly, promising that as soon as he usurps the presidency of Lada, he will immediately lift the trade ban with the Belize Empire. The greedy director smirks slyly, anticipating the moment he takes total control of Lada. He gleefully promises to lift the trade ban immediately, provided the Empire assassinates Lily Sabar for him. Night falls over the vibrant commercial city of Lada, unaware of the dark conspiracies brewing in the shadows. In a quiet corner of the city, Yoru and Chiha check into a cozy local inn to rest for the night. Opening the door of their room, Yoru steps inside while Chia follows closely behind. Looking around the moonlit room, Chia lets out a tired sigh after their long, exhausting day. Chia faceplants onto the comfy bed while Yoru offers to sleep in a chair, though Chia immediately insists that he share the bed with her. Before he can decline, Chia forcefully yanks him onto the mattress, catching our hero completely off guard. Cuddling up happily against his arm, Chia giggles with joy, relieved that her savings were enough to afford a single room. As Chiha rests peacefully beside him, Yoru lies awake, staring silently at the ceiling in deep thought. Noticing his solemn expression, Chiha quietly calls out his name in the dark. Yoru confesses that it's been years since he slept on a soft bed, yet his heart aches with worry as he thinks about his missing sister. He wonders if Noah is sleeping safely somewhere, agonizing over what could have possibly caused her to vanish without a trace. Chia looks at him with fiery determination, reassuring him that investigating her disappearance will be their very next mission. Bouncing out of bed, she cheerfully announces that it's time for a shower so she can be completely ready for tomorrow. Before stepping inside, she turns back with a mischievous grin and playfully asks if Yoru wants to join her. A completely flustered Yoru bolts upright in panic, while Chia bursts into laughter and runs into the bathroom. As the bathroom door slams shut, an exhausted Yoru slumps back onto the pillows with a heavy sigh. Closing his eyes, he quietly prays for Noel's safety, only for a mysterious spiritual voice to summon his mind into another dimension. His consciousness transitions back into the Seat of Souls, arriving at a traditional Japanese tea house bathed in bright sunlight. Inside, Matsunaga Hisahide sits peacefully meticulously preparing a bowl of traditional green tea. Sitting alongside him inside the room are Shigavara and the alluring Cleopatra, both waiting patiently for Yoru. Dressed in his academy uniform, Yoru enters through the sliding paper doors to face the heroic spirits. The three legendary spirits stare at him with unusually grave and intense expressions. Yoru feels a sudden weight on his chest, noticing that the heavy atmosphere inside the room feels almost suffocating. Shigavara breaks the silence, telling the boy to take a seat so they can discuss his future plans. Cleopatra smirks seductively from the side, eyeing the young protagonist with keen interest. Kneeling on the tatami mats, Yoru remarks that this place looks like a hideout for plotting villainous schemes, making Matsunaga laugh out loud. Matsunaga grins as he slides a tea bowl across the mat, admitting that Yoru's intuition isn't wrong at all. Setting the tea down in front of the young man, the old warlord decides to cut straight to the point. With a sinister, dark grin, Matsunaga asks if Yoru is ready to construct his master plan for revenge. Shigavara leans forward with a sharp, calculating gaze fully aligned with the scheme. Cleopatra smiles mischievously, eager to see how their dark strategy unfolds. Yoru blinks in surprise, caught off guard by their sudden proposal for a full-scale revenge plot. Shadowy tendrils fill the room as Matsunaga declares that the execution of their strategy is actually quite simple. She explains that Yoru should intervene in Lily's political power struggle, assist her in securing her throne, and demand her nation's full backing in exchange. Cleopatra giggles wickedly, suggesting Yoru seduce and manipulate Lily until she becomes completely obsessed with him. Matsunaga laughs boisterously, advising Yoru to marry Lily so he can rule the entire country of Lada from behind the scenes. She takes it a step further, suggesting they let the enemy assassinate Lily after the marriage so Yoru can blame the empire and seize total control. With an intensely wicked grin, Matsunaga asks Yoru if this ruthless scheme doesn't make his heart race with excitement. Yoru looks down silently, repeating Matsunaga's words with a cold, serious tone. Snapping back in anger, Yoru demands to know if they are enjoying treating his life like a game, firmly refusing to use Lily as a tool. Completely unbothered by his outburst, Cleopatra stares at him coldly and asks if there is any actual problem with using people. Yoru gasps in shock as he realizes just how cold-blooded and detached these legendary figures truly are. Shigavara grins fanatically, declaring that sacrifices are an inevitable cost of revolution and her death would simply honor their cause. Matsunaga's grin grows terrifyingly dark as he adds that sacrifice only makes the sweet taste of vengeance even more beautiful. A wave of disgust washes over Yoru as he realizes the horrifying depth of their madness. In that moment, Yoru realizes that every single spirit bound to him transcends good, evil, and basic human common sense. To achieve their ambitions, the ends will always justify any means, making these figures true anomalies even among legendary heroes. Even if they act as his allies now, he knows they could easily turn on him someday, realizing the word hero doesn't accurately describe them at all. Looking at the towering, sinister spirits surrounding him, Yoru realizes with terrifying clarity that these legendary figures are nothing short of absolute monsters.